That's it.
There we go.
So I was saying that Commission C2, that is for IAU Commission C2, that is communicating astronomy with the public, had the idea that among the members of Commission C2, there are people who have interesting things to say and to share without, it doesn't have to be official in IAU, but just for people to meet other people. There are people in Commission C2 who have interesting things to say, and the first one who told us that she could say some interesting things about women in astronomy is Sethanne Howard. And so Sethanne is an astrophysicist, American astrophysicist, who was a specialist of interesting galaxies and dark matter, I think, and who became interesting. Maybe you are going to say a few words about that, about women in astronomy, and who not discovered, but found a way, found that there have been important women very, very long ago. And so that's it. I will not say more. I will let you, Stefan. I will ask all of you, please, to shut down your microphone. And also again, what I said before, but uh, everybody was not here. If you have things to discuss, yes. So, if you have things to discuss with Sethan, you can. We will have a little chat afterwards, but you can also send her a mail with the address that is written on the chat. Salvador, you have something to say? You raise hands. Salvador?
No, oh, please add in names
No,
of
no. Ah,
women.
so it was a mistake. Yeah. Yes.
Yes,
What do you say?
please add in the names of women I have forgotten.
Yes, yes, I repeat. Yes, I repeat that Stefan would be interesting if you have, so if you know about women, important women that she has not quoted, huh? She would be interesting to have all kind of information about that. Is that it? Yeah.
Okay, thank
So,
you.
so I shut my microphone and you do that. No, where is it?
There, you got it. Thank you very much. Welcome to 4,000 Years of Women in Astronomy, and I mean 4,000 years. There is a saying native to many cultures that women hold up half the sky. China, Africa, it's native to those continents. And if women hold up half the sky, okay, where are the women? And I want you to name one in the chat that cannot be from the 21st and 20th century. Before then, I do not do the 20th century because by the time we get to 1900, the number of women in astronomy is so big that you will lose all the women before. It would swamp all the wonderful women before. So I do not do women from the 20th century. And name one if you know one in the chat. And if we want to know real people, we don't want legend. There are lots of legends, but writing began around 3000 BCE. So writing began in Sumer. I'll tell you where Sumer is in a more moment. Oral history is fine, but they make mistakes. They can make mistakes in the transmission of the oral history. We need written history to find people. Sumer is, here is the Tigris and Euphrates River, the Fertile Crescent, I can blow this up a little bit, and you will see the city called Ur. This is the city I will talk about. It was an important city. It was considered one of the first civilizations. In those days, it was a port city. The Persian Gulf went all the way up to the city. And these are all towns in Sumer. Sumer is the bottom half. Acadia is the top half. And Acadia was led by Sargon, the king of Acadia, the general of the army, and he conquered the Fertile Crescent, and he put his daughter in charge of Ur. So let's look at what we've got in history. We have legends. If you've ever heard of these people, these are legendary. We don't know if they're real or not. We only have legends about them. This is when I will come in, 2334. But to continue with setting the timeline, Hatshepsut was in Egypt. Trojan War was a little bit later. And my personal favorite in the Central America came up with chocolate. So I think that's an important date to remember, 1100 BCE. The first Olympics were in 766. And this is the year of the founding of the city of Rome. And I am coming in right after the legendary ones, right there. Sumer invented the wheel. The people in Sumer invented the wheel in the 4th millennium. But in the 3rd millennium, they had writing. So they established formal schools of learning. They taught reading, writing, math, and astronomy. Math to base 60. So we have 60 minutes to the hour, 60 seconds to the minute, and 360 degrees to the circle. All of that came from Sumer. And they had to read and write over 600 symbols to write their language. This is the beginning. This is when modern science begins and modern history begins, because we have writing now. But I have to say these were not public schools. Only the elite, the wealthy, were taught. The general populace did not get a chance to go to school. Here's my first lady, Enheduanna. I don't speak Sumerian, but that's approximately how it's pronounced. Enheduanna. That part of her name, En, is a title. It means king, queen, leader, ruler, boss. It's a title saying, I'm the top. And so she was the En of Ur. Her father placed her there. Sargon placed her there. And she did not sit still. She kept very busy. She wrote this one sentence I found, and I don't have a translation from the rest of it, so that I don't know which she's referring to. But in other words, they are creating things that are new. I think that's a neat idea, but I wish I knew what she was talking about. We have her portrait. It's an alabaster disc. It's about 0.5 meter in diameter. And it says on the side of the disc what's going on. You can read about it if you can read Sumerian on the side of the disc. And that is Enheduanna. He is dressed in the dress of the En, the royal dress. It was on display at the University of Pennsylvania Museum. I don't think it is on display now, but it was when I was there. We know where she lived. This is the archaeological dig at Ur. This is the Great Ziggurat, if you've heard of it, was built after her time. So she did not live or work in the ziggurat. It was after her death that they built this great temple, and they're restoring it. The Iraqi and the U.S. Army are restoring it. We have her writing on clay tablets in cuneiform. They wrote on damp clay, and they would press a reed into the damp clay. That's cuneiform, reed writing. And they would press it into the damp clay to make a symbol. And this is what her name looks like in Sumerian. They were down to syllables by this time, which is good. She is the earliest named author in the world. Anything written before this did not have the name of the writer. It was broken or missing. So she is the earliest named author. And this is one of her tablets. She was called the Shakespeare of the ancient world, the world's first poet. She wrote, as everyone did, she wrote in poetry, in couplets, down left to right, down the tablet, and they wrote on both sides. So they would write on one side, let it dry in the sun, turn it over, and write on the other side and let it dry in the sun. And that would form the tablet. Now, this is one of her famous long tablets, the Hymn to Inanna. It actually is 3 tablets, if you want to know. But the tablet is not very big. It's not a huge thing. It is the size of a cell phone. You can put it in your pocket. The tablet I have that I can't show you over the web is a doctor's prescription tablet, and it would fit in the doctor's pocket. And the doctor could look up the quotient to heal an illness on the tablet. So she could read and write and cipher. She could do the math. She was a scribe. She did her own writing. She standardized the political and religious structure of the cities. The first code of laws came from Sumer, not Hammurabi, but Sumer, the first code of laws. She controlled the flow of food and supplies for the city temple to the populace. She managed the distribution of land. She maintained the calendar as head of the synod. The synod was the name of the group of people who identified the new moon, each new moon. That was called a synod, hence synodic month. She monitored the stars and the moon. So she was one of the primary historical forerunners of astronomy and mathematics. But she, along with her staff, built observatories all over Sumer, across the cities of Sumer. There are approximately 30 cities. And they used the observatories to view the stars, the planets, and the moon, and record their motion. That's what's important. They recorded their motions. They had a written record. She maintained one of the first calendars, that's a lunar calendar, and which is still used today to date events, of the strict lunar calendar. She wrote a series of short poems, not long. They were called temple poems. There are 42 of them, and they're all available on the web. in English translated. But this is one, the last poem in the sequence is this poem, and she talks about herself, what she did. She was the true woman who possesses exceeding wisdom. She consults a tablet of lapis lazuli that was very rare. It came from Afghanistan. She gives advice to all lands. That's a leader. She measures off the heavens. That's an astronomer. And she places the measuring cords on the earth. That's a mathematician or surveyor. Another small poem she wrote gives us a clue. In the Gipar, they track the passage of the moon. The Gipar is the name of the observatory that they built. They called it a Gipar, and it's where the team would stay. It was sacred. Now, I learned this from Dr. Waith at Cleveland State University, and I thank her for this. I was too lazy to draw in a piece of the celestial sphere. So this is the eastern edge of the celestial sphere where the morning star rises occasionally. And this is the western edge where the evening star sets occasionally. That was known to a lot of people, but she said, this is not a star, it's not a constellation, it's the same object in both cases, and it's the planet Venus. And there is no earlier written evidence of this identification before her time. So that is doing astronomy. Her works were studied in the schools for over 500 years. Her works were textbook. She wrote several long poems. And they studied her style of writing and how she used the couplets to describe what she wanted to describe. And this historian said you can actually trace her style through the years, through the Babylonians, the Hebrew Bible, the Homer, all used her style down to maybe almost the early Christian church, but we don't know. But almost 2,000 years of her style lasting, her works, her composition as models. So she is my charm, my first one, Sumer. And I think she's very special because she was the first one who wrote. Aganice was an astronomer in Egypt who lived a bit later. But what Aganice did is come up with the not equations, but predictions of how you found the planets, gave planetary tables in hieroglyphs, which is no mean trick. And this I added in because I can't pronounce her name. Caputi was in Sumer and is known as the world's first chemist. Just an extra. It turns out that the Babylonians in 1800 BCE had the triplets A, B, C. That's the Pythagorean theorem. They knew it long before Pythagoras. They had the Pythagorean theorem, and it's here on this tablet. That Plimpton is the name of the person who found the tablet. Now, I could give you a list, but I'm not going to do that because lists are boring. I want you to remember that if I give you a name, there are 20 to 30 to 40 people behind her that count, and I'm omitting. So don't worry about it. I'm not going to put lists up and talk about one by one by one. Somebody has a hand up. Do you have a hand up? No?
It's you. It's you.
Me?
Yeah. Probably you
Huh.
did it without uh, wanting to do it. But it's you.
Hmm.
So
Well,
no problem.
Theano was the wife of Pythagoras, and she invented the golden ratio, which means this is the ratio most pleasing to the eye. A plus B is to A as A is to B. And the actual value of the golden ratio is 1.618 dot, 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 dot. It's a repeat, infinite decimal, and it's a ratio. You can actually build a spiral if you build rectangles, golden rectangles. Each one of these is a golden rectangle. And you can draw the spiral that they define, and that's the golden mean spiral. It does not do too well matching to a seashell. If you can, it's faint to see, but it's faint blue lines. It doesn't match it very well. It does better with these stairs that I would not climb, that they're not safe. But it does very well with hurricanes. The golden mean spiral fits hurricanes very well. And I thought it did pretty good with M51, Messier 51, the galaxy. Here's the spiral. And I thought it did pretty well there for astronomy. This is a name you have heard of, but not as a scientist. She spoke 9 languages. Spoke, read, wrote. She was fluent in 9 languages. And she studied astronomy, among other things. That meant when Julius Caesar came to her and said, "The Roman calendar is a mess. I don't know what to do." She knew how to fix it, and she lent him her court astronomer to fix up the Roman calendar. It had problems, but she fixed up the Roman calendar. It didn't last, but she was considered an expert in medicine. And so people would come to her to heal their woes and their ills. Hypatia. It's pronounced Hypatia because she's Greek. And when I gave this talk once and called it by the name Americans use, this Greek lady said, no, 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 no. It's Hypatia. And that's how the Greeks called her, Hypatia. She lived in Alexandria, Egypt. She was the philosopher at the Great Library in Alexandria. And a letter written to the philosopher, addressed to the philosopher at the library, would be delivered to her. She was considered the philosopher. She was a teacher, an inventor. Some textbooks say that she invented the astrolabe. That is incorrect. She did not invent it. She could build it. She could make it work, all of that, but she did not create the first one. She was a writer. She wrote some books I'll tell you about. And she did taught math and astronomy. She also did invent a method for measuring the specific gravity of liquids. And there is an Italian film, Agora. Agora means marketplace. And it is the story of her life. If you can ever get, it's a short film, so it's available on CD and DVD and from various sites. And it's a beautiful film. They did a wonderful job of describing her life in the mixture that Alexandria was in 400. It was a mixture of cultures and people and religions, and they all fought with each other, and she tried to maintain her dignity throughout. This is what we know she wrote, but it's all been destroyed since they destroyed the library in Alexandria. With that destruction, we lost the world's treasures. And these are the books she wrote. And she did write an astronomical canon, which is a book on where the planets are. And Ptolemy's Almagest, that's wonderful. She edited it and fixed it up. Now, reserve your right to think. For even to think wrongly is better than not to think at all. If you remember nothing else, remember this from the talk, because she wrote that, and it's a wonderful, wonderful statement. Reserve your right to think. She spoke her mind in Alexandria, which was a little bit dangerous because there were people who did not believe she should be teaching as a woman. And the Bishop Cyril gathered together a group of monks, and they dragged her from her chariot in 415 and peeled her to death with oyster shells. And that is how she died. And they spread her ashes around. There's no record of her body. So she sacrificed herself for her science. We don't do that anymore, right? In Dr. Genoa Mahmoudi was an Iranian meteorologist who was executed by the Iranian Revolutionary Guard on December 27th, 1981. And I dedicate these talks to her because her family told me that it's very important that we remember her, that she was real. Dr. Genoa Mahmoudi, executed for being a woman who dared to be a scientist in Iran. Well, the Dark Ages came, what people call the Dark Ages. I don't think they were dark at all. There were schools all over the place. There was a Buddhist school in India, didn't last too long, but 700 years. And this university, I can't pronounce it, but this university in Morocco was founded by a woman, Fatima, in 1859. The plus sign means the university is still going on and producing students. So this is the actual first university that exists. It was founded by a female. Then came the Salerno, Italy Medical School, and all the convents and monasteries ran schools, again for the wealthy. But nonetheless, you could learn the 7 liberal arts from the convent for girls and the monastery for boys. The first university at Bologna still exists in Italy, and the University of Paris still exists in France. They're different. Bologna opened the doors to men and women equally, and all the universities in Italy were open to men and women, both. From that time to now. The University of Paris, when it was first opened, said you had to be a member of the clergy, which is male. So only men could go to the university. They changed that eventually, but in the beginning, it was only men. But Italy let the women in. So you'll find a lot of Italian scientists, women. Sunduk. I tried to find people from around the world. Sunduk was the Queen of Korea. And this monument is the Tower of the Sun and the Moon that she had built to observe the sun and the moon. And you can see it's got a fence around it to protect it. I don't know how they used it. I don't know how they got in, but nonetheless, it is what they used to observe the sun and the moon. Hildegard. Has everybody heard of Hildegard? A scholar, a leader, a musician, a writer, a mystic, a healer, and an artist. She wrote books. She led her abbey of Benedictine nuns. She wrote Gregorian chants, which are beautiful. She wrote books, one on the physics of the world, one on plants and what they can do for you, and one on herbs and spices and what they can do for you, and other books. She was a mystic. She had visions. She was the healer for the abbey and would heal people. She was an artist. She did illuminations like this illumination on the right. And that was my favorite one. It's a little difficult to find, but it's my favorite one because it reminds me of falling stars. So her science in her book on physics, she says the stars gravitate around the sun just as the earth attracts the creatures which inhabit it. So gravity for the stars and the earth, the same. If it is cold where we are, on the other side of the earth, it has to be warm. Otherwise, the earth would not be in equilibrium. That's rather clever. I mean, it's obvious to us now, but back then in 1100, it was clever. She said, stars are not immovable, but transverse the universe in a manner similar to blood moving through the body. I'm not quite sure what she meant by that, but interesting analogy. Now, she was not perfect. She believed in the power of gems. They will heal the body if taken to bed. And a diamond held in the mouth of a liar will cure them of any spiritual defects. So she had a few oddball notions, but most of her was very wise. And she had you can find on the web something called Hildegard's Cookies of Joy. And they are spice cookies, cinnamon, from her book on herbs and spices. She believed cinnamon was important and the cookies are delicious. They're little spice cookies. If you follow her recipe, you can find the modern recipe on the web. Herod, an abbess of Landsberg, wrote one of the earliest encyclopedias. And this is the cover of the encyclopedias. Covering these around here are the 7 liberal arts. They're all women surrounding the center. And the 7 liberal arts, just to remind you, there are the 3, grammar, rhetoric, and logic, and the 4, arithmetic, geometry, music, and astronomy, is part of the 7 liberal arts. That's just to remind you. Maria Kirsch, she did work on the conjunction of the sun with Saturn, Venus, and Jupiter in 1709 and 1712. She did also discover a comet. It was not followed, convention was not followed because they did not name it after her. Unfortunately, they named it after her husband. But she did discover the comet. All their children studied astronomy, the 4 children. She continued to publish her astronomy work in Germany and worked on the aurora borealis and the conjunction of the sun with Saturn and Venus. And I found interesting that many history books say 1 German astronomer in 7 was a woman during the late 1600s. I find that interesting. 1 in 7. Sophia Bry, Tycho. Tycho Bry had a sister, and she actually came with him and helped him in his observations. She also was a physician and helped heal the people who formed his group where he built his observatories. And so the Danes honor her by saying it's not just Tycho's star, it's a double star. Sophia Bry, an astronomer who worked with Tycho Brahe. Sister de la Cruz, in the 17th century, was an astronomer. She had a small telescope. She had a library of, I think it was 4,000 books, which in the 17th century, the 1600s, was hard to accumulate. But she lived in Mexico City. She wrote poetry as well, and she was a nun, wrote poetry as well, and is honored as a poet, an honored poet of Mexico. So they put her picture on money. This is an old picture that she's been put on a newer version of the peso, and I need to get that. But Sister de la Cruz was an astronomer. Aphra Behn, buried in Westminster Abbey as an honor because she earned her living by writing, the first woman to do so. She translated a book, Conversations on the Plurality of Worlds. It's a science fiction book. I love to read the book, but I don't have it. But she wrote the book in 1686. This is the cover of the book written by Marie Cunitz. Marie Cunitz lived shortly after Kepler lived. It's nice to be able to give a talk and say Kepler and not have to explain who he was. She wrote it first in Latin and then in German. And what she did was simplify Kepler. Kepler's work was dense, difficult to use, and he used the current mathematics of the day, which were logarithms. So she wrote it without logarithms and simplified how you got to the positions of the planets. And the book went through many editions. It was very popular. However, nobody believed she wrote it. They believed her husband wrote it for her, and he had to write letters saying, no, he did not write it, she did. But even after her death, they went after her saying she could not have written such a wonderful book because it was fantastic. It made the Kepler's laws accessible to the people. Margaret Cavendish was a lively lady and wrote the description of the world called The Blazing World. That's another science fiction book. And she was lively. She didn't want to die in sluggish security. She'd rather die in the adventure of noble achievements. Elizabeth Hevelius. She worked with her husband until he died, and then she carried on his work. They built a catalog of 1,564 stars, and this was one of the early catalogs that fed into the list of catalogs that come up today, where they came from. If you're going to get a catalog, you start back with her and Ptolemy. This lady, La Sablière, she lived in France and ran a salon. She also was employed by the Paris Observatory to work on astronomy projects, but she was maligned. She was hated by the men of the day because they said her telescope was just inverted glasses, and her Latin was sloppy. So they picked on her. But nevertheless, she continued her salon and continued her work at Paris Observatory. Some books call her the first woman in astronomy. Now, you know better than that now. She wasn't the first woman in astronomy, but she was a woman in astronomy. Maria Agnesi in Italy wrote this wonderful book called Analytical Institutions, which is a math book. And by the time she was 10, she could speak 7 languages, read, write, and speak 7 languages. She was called the Oracle of the 7 Tongues. But she wrote this book in math, and in this book, she solved a cubic curve. They call it the curve of the Witch of Agnesi. Now, when I was in school 100 years ago, my calculus textbooks had her curve in it. It was called that, the curve of the Witch of Agnesi, and I had to figure it out. So it did last. I don't think it's in the textbooks now, but they did not think she was a witch. To curve in Middle Italian is avversiera, that which turns. That's a curve. When they translated this into English, they made a mistake. They put the A in front of the V and stuck an L in front of it, la versiera, which means witch. So it is the curve that is the witch, not Agnesi, which I think is kind of cute, but it's too bad it's a mistranslation. That's the curve, the red. And that's the cubic formula. It should stop. Yes. Hortense was the wife of the royal clockmaker of France. And she was hired by the Paris Observatory to calculate the orbit of the expected arrival of Halley's Comet. This was a lot of calculation. These things were not easy to do by hand. You had to fold in the effect of Jupiter and Saturn and Mars, and everything had to go in. It was all very difficult to do, but she did it. And she worked at the Paris Observatory the rest of her life until her eyes gave out and she could no longer see to work. In her honor, they named this flower Hortensia. This is a beautiful flower, and it's named Hortensia in her honor. Carolyn Herschel. Maybe you've all heard of Carolyn Herschel. William Herschel discovered the planet Uranus, lived in Germany, moved to England, and after she helped him throughout his life, and after his death, she continued his work. She continued compiling the catalog, and William was very messy. He would write on scraps of paper, and she arranged them all and put them in order in the form of a catalog in zones. So this was all, she made Herschel's work accessible to people who wanted to use the reference of every star in the British catalog. So these catalogs, along with the others, form the basis for modern catalogs used in astronomy today. Carolyn. She was also hired, after William died, hired by the king to work in astronomy, and he paid her. So she was apparently the first civil servant who was a woman in Britain. In Britain, not in the world, but in Britain. Marquise de Châtelet. She is another lively lady. She translated Newton's Principia into French. And when I wrote this, it was still the only French translation of Newton. If it's not, if anybody else knows there is a later edition, please let me know. She actually wrote something that I love, that I want to share with you. Judge me for my own merits or lack of them, but do not look upon me as a mere appendage to this great general or that great scholar, this star that shines at the court of France, or that famed author. I am in my own right a whole person, responsible to myself alone for all that I am, all that I say, all that I do. It may be that there are metaphysicians and philosophers whose learning is greater than mine, although I have not met them, yet they are but frail humans too, and have their faults. So when I add the sum total of my graces, I confess I am inferior to no one. I think she was really cool. There's a play that describes her life, her non-academic life. China. I found a lady in China. It's very rare to find a lady in China who was actually a scholar. She wrote Precession of the Equinoxes. Dispute means I'm going to write about it. Dispute of Longitude in the Stars, the explanation of a lunar eclipse. I think that's wonderful. And Huang Lu, another one from China, built telescopes and thermometers and a prototype of a camera. This is not a picture she took. This is from Wikipedia I used just to fill out the page. She didn't take this picture of the moon. That's not done with her camera. But she built telescopes in the 18th century. Mary Somerville, very special lady. She wrote books, Mécanique Céleste by Laplace. She translated it into English, and he said she was the only one who understood his mathematics. It was a textbook. She wrote a paper on the magnetic properties of the violent rays of the solar spectrum. She could not read it before the Royal Society, so her husband read it for her. The Connection of the Physical Sciences is a book she wrote, Physical Geography, and Molecular and Microscopic Science. Very widely studied scientist. And in this book, The Connection of the Physical Sciences, is the clue that led people to go look for a planet beyond Uranus. If Uranus had wiggles in it, its orbit, maybe there was a larger planet beyond it. And they started the search for Neptune, which was an interesting search. But what I like is that they held a poll in 2016 on Facebook. She competed with James Clerk Maxwell and Thomas Telford, and they said whoever wins will be put on the 10-pound note of the Royal Bank of Scotland. And she won. She beat out Maxwell, which I found interesting. But there she is on the 10-pound note in Scotland, Royal Bank of Scotland. I found two in India, not Indians, but British. And one worked in Madras. She was one of the first women elected a fellow of the Royal Astronomical Society, which was a rare thing. But the other one, Mary or Evershed, was a solar astronomer, and she measured the parameters of the solar prominences from photographs taken at this solar telescope. Here, that's a picture of the solar facility. Two in India, and I don't have any women. I have a mathematician from India, but not an astronomer. So if you have one, please share. I was chief of the U.S. Nautical Almanack Office. Therefore, I felt impelled to share with you that there were lots of women there. This is before my time. They were all before my time, before I got there. And the Nautical Almanack Office publishes the Astronomical Almanac, which used to be very popular at telescopes. It isn't as popular today, but you still need the Astronomical Almanac. And all these ladies were computers there. There were women there when I was chief. Maria Mitchell. If you stopped a person on the street in the United States in 1880 and said, "Tell me who a scientist is," they would say, "Oh, Maria Mitchell." She was that well respected. This is all the things she did. I'm not going to read them to you, but I'm going to talk about the one at the bottom, the Boston Library. The old Boston Library was built out of marble, and the top frieze was marble, and they engraved in each marble rectangle the name of a famous scientist. And in between Thales, scientist, and Einstein, scientist, was Maria Mitchell, in between the two. That's how highly they thought of her. This was her student who founded Swarthmore College. She studied with Maria Mitchell at Vassar. And I just point her out because she was an astronomer. I don't know what she did in astronomy particularly, other than found the college. And you probably have all heard of Pickering's harem. I'm not going to go through all the women who did all the wonderful stuff, because we get into the 20th century. And Harvard University hired computers. They paid the women a third of what they paid the men. The women worked at the top of the building and the men worked at the bottom of the building. And they reduced the data on the plates, the Harvard plate collection. So that's where Annie J. Cannon is, and this is from Annie J. Cannon's logbook. So how many out there? If we count the men, there are over 70 million scientists and engineers worldwide. Now, 60% work in science and engineering, and 40% work in business, education, and health. 70 million today. I've stitched my dress with continents, bound the equator round my waist. I waltz to a steady rhythm, bending slightly. I can't stop my arms plunging into galaxies, gloved to elbows in adhesive gold. I carry on my arms a SARS vaccine. With such greedy sight, my eyelids flutter in the breeze. Like a strange, enthusiastic plant, no one fears me except Error, who is everywhere. To me, this poem defines what an astronomer is. When I talked to the poet, she was the national poet of Romania. When I spoke with her, she asked me what I thought of the poem, and I said, well, it means astronomy, it means science. And she said, oh, really? I didn't think it meant that at all. So I don't know what she was writing about, but I take it as astronomy. So I'm going to open it up to questions now. If you don't know who Helen Keller is, Google her. She was one of the great ladies of the 20th century, not an astronomer, but she did say no pessimist ever discovered the secrets of the stars. And astronomers in general are not pessimists. So thank you. And we can open it to questions. If you want to, yeah.
Thank you, Sethanne. Thank you. It was very, very nice talk. Helen Keller, yes, she was blind and deaf, and she could,
Yes,
in spite of that, she could go up to the university and so on.
she went
And
through the university, yes.
very, very interesting and very, very strong
And
woman.
her home is a shrine. It's a you can visit her home and see the magic pump where
Mm.
she came up with the word water for the first time.
Mm. So
Uh,
we will open the question, and I can see the chat. I see from the top that Shannon spoke of Henrietta Leavitt, but Henrietta Leavitt was one of the women of the Pickering harem, with Anita
uh,
Menon, and Henrietta Leavitt was the one who discovered the period luminosity relation, who is still used with some. Of course, it's more precise now, but
Henrietta Swan Leavitt was one of the members of Pickering's harem.
yeah.
Carolyn Herschel, I talked about. Uh, and
This
Wang
Wang Zeni, uh,
Zing, I don't know. I've got a new one. Yay!
Salvador, can you tell us if you are here?
Yes, yes, I'm here. I'm here.
Yeah, who was Wang
She,
Zeni?
she, she was on the talk, or maybe I didn't type the name properly, but it was the Chinese astronomer. It was
Oh,
included on the talk of Cezanne.
so maybe you can say that, send a mail to Sethanne about
No,
And email
but
to
it
me, please.
mm, and yeah, I think that's it. What I see from the chat. So, is there anyone who would like to ask some question now to Sethanne?
No, but I want to thank her for her talk. It was very nice. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
I'm
you. I
glad.
think so too.
I hope people learned a bit.
And maybe I will stop
There
the.
is a book, by the way.
Oh, yes, you have written a book. You can say that.
The book is called The Hidden Giants, and you can buy the book. And there is a website for children maintained at the University of Alabama. And it talks about these women, but it's for children. So it's very abbreviated. It's not detailed and it's out of date. I haven't had time to update it. So it's out of date, but that's the website that goes along with the book. And the book is The Hidden Giants. And you can get it in Kindle or in paperback.
Okay, thank you. We keep that in the record. Now I stop the record.